Welcome back to the Peace Built. My name is Nicholson, and this is a channel where I like to speak about growing character and developing your evolution as a human being. I like to do this outside in places like this because it allows me to feel the abundance of Earth and how that flows through my mind and my body, my energy and my attention. And this is what we're going to speak about, what I'm going to speak about to you right now, about money, abundance, material wealth. Because the first 3 episodes were laying the foundation to get to this point. The first one was meditation, which is how to come into balance with the existence. And if you don't, you're going to be dragged there because life is always trying to come back to the center. So you may as well do that consciously to make it a graceful process. The second episode was about consumption, which will give you the clarity and the balance to be in a meditative state as you walk through the world. You don't have to have your eyes closed and sit like this to be meditative. You can actually do that with your eyes open as you interact with the world and build relationships, which was the third episode, about understanding the interdependence of life and how you can use that to navigate what it is you want to do. So all of these 3 things are unavoidable. And once they're mastered, once you have grasped the fundamentals of what they are, then you can wisely jump into building your material wealth. Lots of people do this out of order. They want to have something, so they think, what can I do to get that? And then they think last, what do I need to become to get the thing? And as we've seen countless times over history, maybe even in your life, and people you have seen, that if you focus on the material first and the being last, it has a way of reversing the order and throwing you out of whack no matter what you do. You may even get to a height of commanding capital, but it's going to tear your spirit apart. So this is how to do this in a gradual process to where when you attain the wealth you're looking for, you can keep it, you can sustain it. So this all revolves around money. All of us desire it. Maybe not all of us, but most of us do in the society today. But many of us don't know what the origin of it is. We don't even know what the word means. And on my research, I found that the origin of the word comes from the Latin word monere, which means to advise. And how money came into being was in Roman ancient society, which is what I saw on my studies, from a temple called Juno Moneta, something like that. I'll put it in the description. But they believe that money was a divine tool, like inspiration. And it was minted, it was created and distributed from a temple. So for them, money was a sacred thing, and therefore you had to understand the ways of the sacred to earn money. You had to be guided by inspiration to even have the idea to create the money in the first place. And then once that money is circulated, just as inspiration is circulated, you can use your own connection to that sacred to come up with valuable things to offer to your people. And for me, this is the most sound way to perceive money, to think of what do I need to do to acquire the money, because it all comes down to not working hard, but it comes down to using your judgment, using your discernment. If we look throughout history, we can see that the most wealthy people in the world were not slaves. They weren't in hard labor. They were in positions of power through their wisdom that allowed them to lead people from a state of chaos to clarity. They were advising, they were warning people, they were using their ability to speak to lead people towards profitable ends. Inspiration, if we break down the word, inspiration, in is obviously within, sphere comes from the word spirit. So if you allow the spirit to move through you, if you have a meditative foundation, if you're consuming correctly, and you understand the interdependence of life through relationships, the organization within your mind will be in right relationship. Therefore, you will be in right attunement with the spirit, and you will have ideas to give to the people. So money in itself is essentially materialized inspiration. It circulates throughout the population just as inspiration circulates throughout the population, and it ends up in the hands of worthy people. That is obviously the idealistic way to see how the economy works. It doesn't work like that today, but this is the general base of how this all started. It had good intentions. So if you have a negative view, a negative relationship with money, as I did for a long time, I actually wanted to be a monk. I didn't want to deal with any of this stuff. I just wanted to sit in the mountains and not worry about dealing with the corruption of the world. But this gave me a poor relationship with society, relationships, even my own thoughts. And I sat down with myself for long enough to understand that earning money, making profit, is not a bad thing. It's actually an existential pattern of humanity. It is an archetype. As I said on the last episode, archetypes are characters that appear and disappear across the story of humanity, like a knight, like a king, like a magician. So it doesn't only cover characters, but it covers natural things, tools that we have used to get to this point in civilization. So one of those things is money. It wasn't always dollar bills. Sometimes it was she-cells, sometimes it was cattle. We can really turn anything into money because it is a meta object. It is something that we use our imagination, our collective imagination, to come to an agreement that this is valuable, that this can improve our experience. So it's not going anywhere. Even if capitalism were to change, if there was a more ethical system, money would still be there. So it's really in our best interest to be in tune with this inspiration, to use our talents to create things that will inspire other people to give you their money so it can circulate throughout the system. That's the ideal. It's simply a medium of exchange, currency. And it's called that for a reason. One, from what I've seen, is that the most efficient shape, the most efficient form on Earth is a stream. As we can see here, I'm sitting next to a stream. If you recognize the positioning of all major commercial centers, you can see that they're by the water, which is fluid. It's by a stream. It has the least amount of friction. It has the most amount of inspiration. It is the shape that is most like the spirit. Even when someone is speaking well, you can say they're speaking within a stream of consciousness. If someone has lots of income, we can say that they have different streams of income that lead into their bank. So again, if you turn yourself into a current, into a channel of value by recognizing what improves your own experience, and then you package that and give that to other people, learning how to take the subtlety of what's around us and bring it down to something that's more grounded to where you can share it with other people, that's really the key. And this all begins in the mind. In fact, today, if you don't know this, then maybe you haven't been paying attention to the state of the world, but money used to be backed by things that were substantial, like the earth. It was gold, silver, cattle, seashells, things like that, that had a limited quantity. So therefore its value was solid, because the moment you limit the quantity of something, it crystallizes its value, because the more you have of something, the less rare it is. And we all have this evolutionary understanding that if there's a bunch of something, it's probably not that valuable. Unless it keeps us alive like the air. But that's something you can't manage. It's all about managing resources. So money today is backed by our imagination. It's made from the Federal Reserve out of nothing. It is a digital object. Therefore, you can use a computer to enter it into the system. So, the origin of money was made from inspiration that was materialized into a coin. And it has kept that lineage to the point where it's even more subtle now, to where it's made literally from people's minds if they're in that position of power. So this is a huge reason why it doesn't make sense, if you're aware of this, to break your back for money. You should be using the more subtle faculties of who you are, your mind and your imagination, your creativity, your ability to allow the spirit to flow through you to earn money. If you are using your body extensively to earn money, you're not going to make it in the long run, because it doesn't work like that. There's going to be too much friction. There's not enough currency, not enough fluidity for you to attain the amount of reserves for you to break away from the system altogether so you can experience what else is going on here. The economy is just a system of survival, just like the ecosystem is a system of survival. So we are not supposed to be using all of our time to survive. And if you do this, if you attune to the lower nature of who you are, because you don't rise in your awareness through a lack of meditation and lack of proper eating and understanding relationships. You're only going to be operating at an animal level. Therefore, you're going to believe that hard work is a virtue. It is important to work hard on things that are valuable. But if you're working hard simply to work hard on something, it means nothing. You're not going to get very far. In fact, you'll end up with hospital bills that you can't pay for because not enough currents running through your bank. So even if we say the bank of a river, it is an existential phenomena that the river flows from bank to bank, and it leaves deposits of rocks and sediments, different kinds of resources that all the ecosystem depends upon. If there was no water, there would be no any of this. If there was no river here, all of this would be dead. So this means that the bank is something that is still, and it cooperates with the movement, the circulation of the currents of the money system. So you should never be afraid to spend money to make a export with your money so you can import something of value. People who cling to their money, again, are not flowing with it. Therefore, they won't allow that same flow to come back to them. They won't allow the circle to exponentially rise to grow their reserves. So, again, all of us desire this resource. But how do we get it? How do we get it in the first place? Well, it's important to understand, as I said, that all of the money is flowing from bank to bank, which means all the currents that you could ever desire are in someone else's bank. They're in a secure system where it's safe, literally in a safe. So how do you get their money from their bank that flows into your bank? Well, you need to inspire them to give it to you. And how do you do that? You have to offer them something. The offer in the economic system is the number one asset, because this is something you can use over and over and over again to attach to someone's awareness that they will then funnel from their bank into your bank. So just as a real world example with this channel, with this business now, this is a operation to teach people, to give people value, to improve their experience of life, to help them navigate through this complex video game. In exchange, I will receive attention, prestige, money for people who want to work with me, because the wisdom I'm giving you is worth more than the money in your account, if it's priced correctly. It makes no sense to want all the money in someone else's bank, but there are fractions of money that people will be willing to give you if you give them a fraction of what you have. And this all helps with the circulation. And this requires a sense of foresight, a sense of understanding the patterns, the relationships of how something gets from this point in space-time to this point in space-time, which requires a thought process that is fluid, that is channeling knowledge from something like the Akashic Records, which is what I talked about on the last episode. So this foresight is the nature of a prophet. And I want you to notice how close the word prophet is to the word profit. It's actually a necessity that you see things before they happen. You can create value before it's recognized by a group. So they will understand that it is rare. If you don't exercise your ability to be a prophet, to create valuable things, you will be perceived as a commodity, and you will make things that are already here. Just like nails that are made in a factory, the first nail that was made was the very first nail, was not a commodity because it was the first of its kind, right? But then when you make 1,000 of them, 2,000, millions of them, they're useful, but there's a bunch of them. There's no sense of vision that's required to make another nail after one has already been made. Even when you look in history, again, you'll see that kings who led people, entire nations, resources, they were advising people on where to go, how to behave, what should the laws be. But on their side, they had an advisor. Even today, I believe a president has an advisor. And these were prophets, people who could see into the future. There's even a story of Moses who assisted Pharaoh to protect them, to warn them about certain things that would come if they did this, this, and that in the wrong order. And this is a capacity that we all have today. But you need to sacrifice the dopamine, the stimulation that comes within our society, because it's trying to hook us into a certain wheel, a certain karma that's limited. The systems in the world are not trying to take you into a larger vision of life because they profit, they had the foresight, they were capitalist prophets who foresaw that if we create a certain system of marketing, of addiction, of artificial environments, that these people will remain in a rat race that takes them on a same circle, and they will work on the weekday, which is where your strength dissipates for 5 days, and then you can forget what happened to you on the weekend, which is where you should be able to recover your strength because the weakness should end. But for most people, they use that time to sedate themselves to where they forget, and then they end up on Monday once again to repeat the same cycle. So if you're in this small position, you will never look beyond yourself, and you will never see what else is there. And you will continue to make the same profit over and over and over again. And as there's more money that's getting flooded into the economic system, because people are literally making it up and putting it into the system, it's going to be worth less and less and less, because the more money there is in the system, the less it's worth. And this is the predicament of an employee, a wage worker. Wage comes from the Frankish Germanic word, which means wadi. And that word means pledge. So essentially, you're pledging your allegiance to someone who has taken the risk to develop a profitable system and you guarantee that you're using someone else's foresight to channel that money from their bank into your bank. And then you have a steady income because you have a static position. Oh, there's a dog over there. And there's no shame in that. If you have no connections, if you don't have the vision of how to run a business, if you don't understand risk and reward, if you have no skills, if you don't have the bravery to do it, then becoming an employee is a good option. This is what I did. And it gave me the time. Because the position is static, there's really no evolution when it comes to being an employee. And you can use that time, the downtime, to understand how all this is working. This is what I did. How does the economy works? What are the basics of value? What is money? Everything I'm talking about now, I use the time from my job, from being an employee, that I exchanged my time for money. But I also exchange my time for wisdom, which is the only way to get out of the cycle of an employee. So what's the difference between a wage worker, someone who pledges their allegiance to a boss, from an entrepreneur, which is what I'm stepping into now? So if you look at the origin of the word entrepreneur, it relates to the words in between, which means they are people who don't stay in any sort of position. They actually attain a meta position because their loyalty, their pledge is to the current itself. It's not to the position, it's to the actual current that flows through position to position to position. So they can work on this task, on this task, on this task, and they get paid. If you're smart about it, you won't tie your income to time, you will tie it to the task. Because time is a limited resource, and money is from the imagination. Imagination is unlimited. So if you tie your earning potential to a limited unit of time, you won't ever be able to achieve an unlimited amount of money, which is what we all want. A sense that money will never run out, and that's truly financial freedom, because you will position yourself to where you never have to use the money again. That's really the key of finance. Finance means, or it comes from the word fin. Fin means to end. And in this case, it means to end all your debts. So the purpose of finance is to end your debts. So it's not really to accumulate. That's not the point. The point is to arrange your resources to the point where you can exit. Lots of business owners, when they earn lots of money with their operation, they do an exit deal, which can be a huge amount of money, to the point where they never have to work again. They can work if they want to, but if they don't want to, they don't have to. And then they can focus on higher things of life, the more subtle needs that they have. So if you're an employee, because it's guaranteed, you don't have to take a risk. But if you're an entrepreneur, your life is all about risk. But also if you're a human being and you're evolving, you're like a sannyasi, getting out of the samsara, your life is always about risk. And risk is not only about a cost, it is an opening to get to a larger realm of life. And there's an opening because most people won't do it, because they don't have the meditative foundation in their emotions. They're not consuming correctly. They don't understand relationships. So why would they ever jump into a situation that they can't see well? Because there is a fear of death always. So if you are on the edge of being an employee, being an entrepreneur, being an employee, being an entrepreneur, because you're afraid of risk, it's important to understand that risk is not something that's going to go away. It's always going to be there. But how do we manage this risk? How do we keep our emotions stable to the point where when we see a risk with our profit-like ability, that we can alchemize it into wealth? And this is being in right relationship with life. Life is abundant. All creatures are depending upon the current to survive of inspiration. There is life energy flowing all around us. So if we understand how to consolidate this to make it a coherent operation, then there's no reason why you can't achieve wealth. Especially in a society like this. There's obviously other societies across the world who are dealing with all kinds of political upheaval. But in the position we are in right now, we can decide that we're going to live with a sense of integrity. We're going to tell the truth. We're going to provide things that actually uplift people, that take away their suffering and give them a larger perspective. And we can live well. You don't have to be a crook to have nice things. There's nothing wrong with that. Running out of time here. So the last thing I'm going to speak about is the necessity of exchange, of trading. Because the only way to achieve wealth is to trade something. The only way to exist here right now is to trade something. The fact that I'm able to sit here and you're able to sit there is because we are exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide with the environment. We're giving them carbon dioxide. The trees are giving us oxygen. There's a trade going on. There's a sense of inclusiveness going on. So if you are always looking to exchange something, it could even be a call with your friend, or a letter to your lover, or a YouTube video to an audience. It's important to know, to be conscious of the fact that we can only exist here if we're flipping our lives into something that is useful for other people. Even as I speak here now, there's an exchange within me of words and silence, of reflection and speaking, of looking at the environment to gain inspiration, from looking at the camera to give you my attention. The point is to flow. And the income you receive is directly dependent upon the position. That's a vital point to understand financially. And I can describe it further using a metaphor. Let's say you have a bucket and you're really thirsty. You're parched, you need water, or you're going to die. There's a waterfall that's right here. It's coming down only right here. But your bucket, you standing right here, and you're praying, you're strategizing, you're doing everything you can to have this currency flow into your bucket so you can survive. You're crying, you're pleading, you're doing everything. But all you have to do is take yourself and move over here. The water, no matter what you do, is not going to somehow come straight down to disobey. It's not going to disobey the laws of nature and somehow curve into your bucket You have to physically move your position. So because I'm sitting here now, I am in the position of receiving income of the water, of the trees, of the birds, of knowledge, of the wind, of these beautiful aesthetics, these valuable aesthetics that uplift this experience. But if I was sitting in my room and I tried as hard as I could to have this same experience, it's just not going to happen. And this is a inefficient way to use your mind, your energy, your time, if you simply understand the laws of navigation, which is probably what I'll speak about next. I will. If you understand this, the basic laws of navigation, your life will be so much easier. There are people who are earning money, lifting a little finger, that is 3, 4, 5 times as much as someone who is in a position breaking their back, struggling. We should not live like this if we have intelligence, if we can gently tell what's happening from within us. Understanding this relationship is key. And being in contact with people who have this knowledge, building a relationship out of respect and exchange of information, so important. So this is a framework to receive this materialized inspiration into your bank through advising. If you did not understand this video, I would rewind it, watch it again, watch it as many times as it takes. This is something that took me a long time to understand and put it in a condensed frame. But if you understand this, you'll be good in this economy, which is simply a system of survival. But here we're going beyond survival into the spiritual principles of how things work. Not just what is popular, what people say how things work, but how things actually work. So this is all I have here for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been with me for this long, it means a lot. Thank you for the people who have watched my videos thus far. This concludes the intro to this channel. If you received value from this, if this uplifted your experience, please leave a like, comment, subscription. Really helps with the channel. This is something I love to do. It's weaving in spiritual principles with business is actually a lot of fun. So I hope this inspired you to do the same, and I will see you on the next episode. Peace.